Oh, durka durka durka.
So this video is to talk about what is my favorite type of knife. And honestly, who cares about what my favorite type of knife is? I'm just some guy who cares. But the purpose of me talking about this is maybe if you like the same type of knives that I do, you learn about it. You learn about these knives or some knives you haven't heard of, and you get some enjoyment out of that. Or if you don't like the same kind of knives that I like, maybe you don't waste the money that I waste because you learn from me about finding your type. So the purpose of this is about what is your type of knife, or I guess what is my type of knife. I have been buying knives for about just a couple months. I mean, it's sort of become it's ridiculous the amount of money that I've spent and wasted on these things since the beginning of 2024. And I have a whole bunch of different styles and just really caught the bug. And so initially, you know, my I wanted to try different things. I wanted to know what was the best handle material. I want to buy something in micarta, something in G10, something in, you know, titanium. What's the best steel? That's kind of tricky, right? I read reviews, but I don't use these things that much to know if it really has the best edge retention, but fine. What's the best steel? What store do I buy it from? I like White Mountain Knives, but everybody has their favorite, whatever. And also maybe most importantly, the kind of the size and the weight and the blade shape, right? But just all these different variables. What do you like? So I went for completeness in the future. I wanted to have, and this is mostly cheap knives, but I wanted to have a breadth. I wanted to have a range from small to large, different types of lock types, materials, all those things. What I've found in the last couple months, and I've bought about 40 knives, is that I have a type, and it is how should I say this? I could hold a great knife, like something that is universally, you know, appreciated, but is not my style of knife. And I'm just going to like it less than maybe an average knife that's my type. And so it doesn't really make sense for me to keep buying things that aren't my type, is the point. I've identified my type as through the process of basically going through my whole collection and saying, what do I actually want to hold? What do I actually end up putting in my pocket every day? Like, what actually feels good? And so I've zeroed in on this type, and first of all, let's just identify what it is. So some things are more kind of prominent here than others in terms of the characteristics, but try to get all these in here. First you can see is the size. Got one more here. So the size of these things. Do I ever really love holding a knife that is significantly smaller than this? Not really. Here's an example. This is the Trivisa Antliae. Perfectly nice knife, 14C28N, decently priced, feels good. It's just a little small. Do you see where it is in my hand? And I just never, when I hold it, it's just something that it doesn't stick with me that this is the thing I want to keep holding, but that I have some kind of, not to sound new agey, but some kind of connection to this or fit with this knife. So it just doesn't quite do it. And so you can see it's just shorter than all these knives. The Moyarl being I'll talk about that a little later, but the closest, but this is just too small. So we're gonna get, you know, this is gonna be the story of Goldilocks here, but this one is just too small to fit the bill. I'll put it in here. This is the Pyrite, large Pyrite, and it's just a little bit too big It's really not much bigger than the Civivi Sinisys here. I mean, get it back here. I don't have the best lighting and everything, but it's just a little bit too big, and this is just right on the edge, but I like it. So the size, probably the most important thing is, for me personally, is the length. And for me, I want my blade is going to be probably 3.5 inch to 3.7 inch. And the handle is going to be around 4.5 inches. So the biggest handle here, this Bestech has a little bit of a kind of an oversized handle relative to its blade, and it's a little bit more than 4.5. So it looks like maybe even closer to 4.75. So that's on the end. So okay, this is I know it's maybe around 4.5, maybe up to 4.7. So now I have this. I basically went through this, right, and checked out all my knives. What do I actually like to hold? This is useful search criteria, right? And Blade HQ, so maybe this is pretty obvious, but they have the best website for knives. Amazon might have the best selection, or White Mountain Knives, but they don't have good filtering capabilities. They don't have good structured data. So you need to go to Blade HQ to do the actual filtering. And so you can't get exactly this granular there, but you could look at the blade size. So I typically look at their filter is 3.5 to 4. So I'm just gonna narrow down a lot of knives that aren't gonna be an exact fit for me just because of the blade size. Then there's the weight. And all these knives, now there's from skinny all the way up. So let's talk about this. So on the very light side, if you really like, the point of this video again being like, maybe if you have the same type that I do, you could get something out of this. If you like a light knife that is of this size, around this size, this Vosteed Bellamy, 2.93 ounces. So I'm just gonna put this recommended. 2.93 ounces. And great burlap micarta. Now most of the ones I have are G10. But this is so good and so grippy that for a lightweight, a little bit larger knife, this one, absolutely. So this is the Vosteed Bellamy if you like lightweight knives of this size. Great option. The weight, I just weighed all these knives, and the weight that I have zeroed in on is 3 to 5 ounces. However, it really practically is more like 3.5 ounces to 4.5 ounces for the typical thing. So again, if you're looking for search criteria or you're just looking at a random knife and like, do I like it? So I'm trying to put together these specs for myself. And so to go to the complete opposite end, the heaviest knife here, excuse me, not that one, Civivi Sinisys. This is a big boy, right? And this thing is 4.97 ounces. So Civivi, I don't have a lot of Civivi knives. They're not, I don't know, they seem to make a lot of smaller knives. Some of their older knives are bigger. This is not a new knife. The Sinisys, not sure when this came out actually, but this is right on the edge of, for me, like as big, as long, as heavy as I'm gonna tolerate for a just pick it out of the drawer situation. But man, this thing is, and it's thin. So it's big, it's long, it's reasonably weighted because it's 5 ounces, just under, and it is thin, if you like that. I'd like a little bit wider knife actually, but if you like this style, again, this is your type. This one is pretty thin. This is about 5 ounces. It's a frame lock, if you like that. The micarta is much smoother than the micarta on the Vosteed, and I don't like it as well, but it feels great. And for the drop for a frame lock for a big old knife is great. So, handle material. So most of the knives that I go for are G10. So before I go to those, and we get into like the most typical, the ones that are most closely fit my type. The two knives that I got out here that fit these general criteria, but are a little different. So this is the premium Miguron Velona carbon fiber, really nice, really light. This is almost as light as that Vosteed, 3.03 ounces. This is kind of an expensive knife though, getting out of budget territory. And this is one of the more expensive knives that I've ever bought. It was like 125 bucks. The Miguron Velona, very rounded, like expensive feeling knife. A great knife to give somebody as a gift that like maybe likes nice things but doesn't know that much about knives. The carbon fiber though, it is a little bit slippery. And so I have other carbon fiber knives, and I just don't think it's quite as practical, but I really like the knife. And so it's in the mix. And similarly, here's the Kizer Clairvoyant. This is the frag pattern from White Mountain Knives. And it's also good enough, whoop, I can spell. It is good enough to get into the regular rotation. It fits the size and handle and weight considerations. And then it feels solid. It has this grippy frag pattern, and I think that the blade shape is kind of cool. I don't know what to call it exactly, but this whole like feels like it's got this kind of interesting undulation to it that's a little unexpected. So these are two more cool knives. So let's close it out. All right, so I got 5 knives here. These are my wheelhouse. And I basically did some measurements and averaged out essentially their blade size and handle size and the other characteristics. So this is my type, and this is what my search criteria should be default. And this is what I should be aware that if I'm buying a knife that doesn't fit these characteristics, that I might just not like it as much. So 3.5-inch blade, that to me, or even a little bit bigger, but that to me is about the perfect size. Because the dimensions of a knife then mean that the handle is typically about 1 inch bigger, thereabouts. I don't have super big hands. I have medium size hands. The material, G10 is very common, but it's also very good. It is very tough. It is light. It is resistant to chemicals and corrosion and all those things. And I like some with a little bit of grip. So Miguron does a really good job with that. This is probably the best. The Civivi is sort of like, this is like a, when you're feeling if you buy a sandpaper assortment from Home Depot, it's like, this would be your, medium grit, which I like. This would be your fine. And then these are all pretty smooth. And so the 5 knives I have here but they all generally fit in these characteristics. They all have a little bit of a blade belly. I don't know. Doing this video, I pulled out the knives that feel best to me. The characteristics, what you're looking at here is not like I have this template in my mind. This is my kind of knife. This is me deriving the type of knife that I like by just filtering out the stuff from the drawer that I don't pick up or don't like as much. So it's clearly G10. It's clearly a more traditional blade shape. In terms of opening it, Also liner lock. Actually, I should mention that. I like liner locks. So I like the D10. I like having some resistance. Okay. Whereas, for example, this is a nice button lock, the Pyrite XL. And I've also sometimes tightened up my button locks a little bit because I want there to be some resistance. But like, I'm sure button lock people like this, but just not exactly my thing, which is fine, whatever. So liner lock for me. So here's my style. And every one of these knives has something special about it, or some reason that it particularly shines within this cohort. And so let me just tell you about each of these knives, again, in case you are looking to buy some random cheap knife and you have the same taste in knives that I do. All right, so my first guy is the Bestech Slyther. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this knife or ever mentioning it. And it's a little bit unconventional for me, but it's about 65 bucks. I think it's a little bit overpriced, to be 100% with you. 14C28N has a kind of a funky blade shape, a fuller that is decorative. But what I like about this knife is it just feels like a tough worker. It feels like a trooper, like somebody that, you know, I don't know how to say it. It's got a chonk factor to it. It's pretty thick, and the handle's a little bit long, so you got some extra edge, I guess, if you wanted to. Besides this pocket clip here and destroying your pocket clip, it feels like you could bang on something like with this in a pinch, and it just feels like a tough knife, and I just like that feel. So it's not exactly my style, but it gets into the inner circle. Next up, Civivi Brazen. Just got this the other day because I'm figuring out my type, and I really like it. It's thinner than most of the other knives a little bit. I guess I should measure these things. I don't have calipers, and it's more about the feel than the absolute measurement, but it feels a little bit more slender. This has thumb stud deployment, and that's really nice, and a flipper. I like the flipper a little bit better. I do like the look of these thumb studs because it's pretty subtle. I don't think that those should be, I don't know. I think that I kind of like a clean look, and so bringing attention to the thumb studs is not exactly my style, but around 40 bucks, I got a deal on it, and this is a pretty vanilla looking knife, to be honest. I mean, it doesn't look special at all. That's the whole point of this video, though. This is not a special knife, and yet this is a very good knife for me. It has a deep carry clip that I like. I like these kind of clips more typically than the titanium milled pocket clips. The thumb stud thing is really practical to me. If you're taking this thing out of your pocket, that's the easiest thing to do with your thumb. So this is not like a cool knife. This is just a good knife. The Miguron Moyarl. This is a knife that does get attention, does get talked about, and is a very good looking knife. Number one, it looks different in person than in the pictures. The pictures, it looks more like a contrast between the blade and the handle, but it's more monotone, but in a good way. I mean, this is just everything is just a flat gray, like a very modern looking knife. I love gray. I very much recommend getting the liner lock on this thing, liner lock version, and the G10. Get the G10. I have the crossbar lock, micarta, and I really dislike that knife, and it just feels completely different to me. So this knife is on the shorter side of the knives that I pointed out in terms of the blade length, but it is still got some heft, and it's very ergonomic, and it's a little bit thicker, and so that makes up for it for me. Like even though the knife, the grind just feels a little bit. I don't love this. It's like I don't love the grind. I don't know. It doesn't. I want something a little bit more traditional and interesting than this sort of. You know, this has a little bit of like PT Cruiser vibes to me, but in general, this thing just and the flick, the reverse flick is great. So A lot of intangible things about this. And so if you're like, oh, this random guy on the internet, it seems like I like these kind of knives, but maybe a little bit smaller. This thing is a fucking knockout. I just got this knife. Got this knife today. So don't ask me about, you know, what my lifelong experience has been with it, but I'm a fan. Petrified Fish Forward 818. And this is D2. This is a $30 knife. The reason that I pulled the trigger on it is because it's so cheap. Not because it's like it brings anything special to the mix versus the other knives, but this knife is very attractive to me. It reminds me of, I don't like Benchmade at all as a brand, but I like the 940 Osborne in green, and this is reminiscent of that to me. And this is also not a new knife. It's been around for years, but I still like it, and it's new to me. I think that this grind here, which has kind of got these three different, almost like triangular looking surfaces, is cool. Stonewash. This Hunter Green, my G10. The G10 has some grip, some, but it's very comfortable. This is a very nice knife. So even though I have some weird thing against G2, it's fucking banger for 30 bucks, man. And who cares? So one deployment method, but one of the best looking knives I have. Good looking in a different way than the Moyarl and the fancy Velona. But you know, if you're not a knife person, you don't know anything about knives, and you just look at these three knives, which one's the best looking? To me, it would probably be 1, 2, 3, but it's also the ascending order of price. Last but not least, how could we forget Fintizo? I've done a couple videos on this brand. It is a total random Amazon brand. It seems to be a cutlery company from mainland China that's been around for a little bit, making a few pocket knives, maybe seeing what sticks, seeing if they can sell it. Seems to be only available on Amazon, not on AliExpress. I don't believe this is a clone of anything. Doesn't have a name. It literally doesn't have a name. It just says 3.38 inch. And the interesting thing is, let's measure it. Is it actually 3.38 inches? Because it depends, but yeah. Okay. But it's got and the cutting edge overall is 3.5, so a little bit bigger. So to me, when I look at 3.38 inches, it's like, well, it's going to be small. No, it's actually definitely a full-size knife, because nice belly size. The handle, I've got a little bit extra down here. And this knife, they mess around with coupons. Wait around until there's a coupon. You should be able to get it for about 35 bucks. 14C28N. This is probably the knife that best fits me out of any knife that I own. Reason being, handle size. I do wish the G10 was slightly grippier. It's pretty smooth, but low profile clip. And I just think the guy who designed this has the same size hands that I have. That's my guess. Because here's my thumb. Everything it's just the right size. All these other ones are good too, but there's just something about this, this little curvature, the jimping on it. If this is a clone or this is like a ripoff of somebody, I mean, I'd love to know in the comments. But it just fits me in my hand. It's good blade steel, and I really like it. So this knife probably is the knife that I carry the most. And I really do like this Petrified Fish too, and I love this green and stonewash. So anyway, that's it. That's my long rambling video about a bunch of knives you never fucking heard of. And purpose of this video though, find your type and buy knives that fit your type. Because if you find the best knife that's actually still too small for you, are you really gonna carry it? Do you even like to fidget with it? And so I guess the alternative title here would be finding my type, or you know, ditching variety. You know, that jettisoning variety for the sake of actually something that you will like and maybe stick in your pocket in the morning. Jettisoning variety for the sake of utility. Congratulations on reaching the end of this video.